Hello and welcome to the Channel Seeds talk about how to combat Fusarium and Pythium in future using new methods in digital and precision agriculture. My name is Marc Besse and I'm leading the product management group and technical expert group for seed treatments and biologicals in Europe for Syngenta. And it's with great pleasure that I'm today joined by Dominic Chatwin. So Dom, please tell us quickly, who are you and what do you do?
Thank you, Marc. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today for this Channel World Seeds talk, and thank you to everyone joining online. My name is Dominic Chatwin. I'm the Regional Technical Expert for Seed Care at Syngenta, and looking forward to sharing some insights with you about Fusarium and Pythium control today.
Super, thank you. Now that we know each other, let's give the audience a quick glimpse on what we are going to talk about today. So you can expect from us within the next 25 to 30 minutes. First, we are looking into the global relevance of Pythium and Fusarium to understand a bit what those diseases cause and how much the damage is that they cause. Then we switch to the future trends of farming, where we tackle also some buzzwords like soil health, biologicals, but also regenerative agriculture. Following this, we are paving our way through the commitment of Syngenta within this changing agricultural landscape. And in the end, of course, we outline also on the best tools that we have at our availability in future to take into account different farming practices to control both Fusarium and Pythium with chemicals and also biologicals. And then in the end, obviously, we are going to wrap up our talk and draw a conclusion. So with that, I would say, let's kick it off.
Let's get started.
So Dom, here's my first question for you. Both Fusarium and Pythium are rather devastating diseases, right? How those diseases are dealt with today? We would be interested in learning about that from you. And I understand they are present in a very wide range of crops and also in a wide range of geographies. But for now, they can be controlled quite effectively. So you are the expert. Over to you.
Yeah, that's right, Marc. They're both incredibly important diseases in their own right, and they also are affecting a wide range of crops in a wide range of situations. Today, however, we're going to be focusing mainly on Fusarium in wheat and Pythium in corn. So if we start with Fusarium, and this disease is affecting wheat in sort of two different ways. So it's both seed-borne and soil-borne infection, which then means that there's a multitude of different ways that we can actually control the disease, from cultural control methods and then also our conventional control chemicals. So with Fusarium as well, there's two key stages of infection. So we've got the early infection, and this is really affecting the establishment of the crop. So from this, we're seeing damping off, poor establishment, as I said, poor rooting, and eventually a potential impact on yield. The other phase, which actually potentially even more important, is the head blight phase in wheat. And this is where we can see a real economic impact on growers. And it's important because when we get the head blight phase infection, we then see incidents of mycotoxins in the wheat, which will then result in a degrading of the value of the end product. When we think about Pythium, so it's an incredibly devastating disease, and this is predominantly due to its incredibly fast life cycle. And it's pretty black and white with Pythium. You've either got it or you haven't. And when you have got it can really wipe out a huge amount of crop. In terms of control methods, we're actually in a relatively good position in Europe at the moment and across the world with some good conventional control methods, and when combining those with the cultural control methods, we actually have a fairly good handle relatively at the moment on controlling these two important diseases.
Thank you. So that means for now the situation is under control, with some exceptions of course, but I know that for this talk you also reviewed several studies. Can you outline a bit also on the economical damage those diseases can have for growers?
Yeah, certainly. So despite from the pictures you can see behind us, obviously the impact in the field, actually probably more important to the growers especially is the economic impact of these diseases. So let's start with Pythium. And so at a country level in the US, it's estimated to cost the agricultural industry around $25 million a year. Now, I appreciate, to caveat that, the US is an enormous country and a big corn-growing country, but still, the numbers are fairly drastic. And then if we think on more of a grower level in terms of Pythium, it can impact the crop. We can expect a reduction in yield of around 11% on average, but that can vary, anything from less than 11 to more, depending on the severity of the infection. And as I mentioned before, it's fairly black and white, and we can see some pretty devastating scenarios with Pythium. When it comes to Fusarium, the risks are kind of twofold. So we've got the initial plant loss, which I mentioned before, and that's the reduced or the poor establishment, and we can potentially see a yield loss of up to 80% as a result of a Fusarium infection. Probably more detrimental at a grower level is the mycotoxins that I mentioned. And if you get high levels of mycotoxins in the end product, and then we experience a downgrading of the value of that product, it's fairly catastrophic to a grower. And between 2010 and 2019, there was around 75 million tons across Europe that was downgraded in quality to feed, estimating to be a value of around 3 billion euros. So some fairly big figures there, and this kind of shows the importance of these two diseases within the industry today.
Super. So now that we have acquired a certain understanding of the challenge, let's shift gear now and talk a bit about some trends that we are all seeing in agriculture. I believe it will help us to reconnect the dots afterwards. And obviously, farming globally undergoes big changes, big challenges are ahead of us. It's of course more advanced in Europe, but also, as I said, we can be seen on a global scale. You're often out in the field connected to growers, so can you explain to us how those farmers that you're interacting with adapt their farming practices, and are words like regen ag, soil health, biologicals, are those just buzzwords, or is there more behind, and what's the reason also for the changing of the farming practices?
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned buzzwords, Marc, and there's always a lot of buzzwords going around in agriculture. None less than regenerative agriculture, biologicals, and soil health at the moment. But I firmly believe that there's a really important message and a lot of important stuff going on in the background with those words. So, as you mentioned, I worked a lot in the past in the UK when I was working as an agronomist directly with growers, and I started to see a real shift in the way that they were farming towards these kind of more regenerative way of producing food. And I think, for me, there was a number of reasons why they were starting to do that. And first of all, it was economic. So there's always been volatility within agriculture, especially the price of the end commodity. But increasingly more recently, we've seen a huge amount of volatility in the inputs that farmers are using on their crops. And as a result, I saw growers really hesitant and thinking twice when they were looking to actually use inputs on their crops. There's also the environmental factors that I think are putting pressure on growers, and this is really a lot of pressure from policy, from government policy, impacting on the way that they're growing their crops and the way they're producing food. There also is a fairly big spotlight on agriculture globally from an emissions and a carbon point of view, and I certainly saw this as an impacting factor on growers actually starting to change the way that they were farming. But I think actually more importantly, and I got to know a lot of these growers very well, is they always have, and increasingly more going forward, they are understanding that their soil is their number one resource. And growers really do understand the importance in maintaining and improving their number one resource on the farm, which is their soil. So this was another key driver as to why they were looking to change the way they were farming and really try to look after the soil for future generations. And I saw a shift with those same growers away from the mindset of kind of barn busting yields and trying to get the highest output from their crop, and actually looking at it more from a gross margin point of view. So how many pounds, shilling and pence in the UK at least can I make from this hectare of wheat, even if it means reducing my overall yield, my overall gross margin could be a lot better, and actually that's more beneficial for them from a business point of view.
Understandable, yes. Thanks a lot for elaborating on that. Before we are switching back to our topic about the Fusarium and the Pythium control, would you be able to explain a bit more in details the impact of those trends? Because obviously, as many times in life, there are pros and cons to everything.
Yeah, certainly, and you can see on the screens behind us that some of the key principles that Syngenta has highlighted as part of this regenerative agriculture movement, if you like. But some of the key changes that I was seeing with the way that my growers were farming was changes in cultivation practices, changes in rotation, and changes in product use. So with cultivation, it was moving more towards kind of a minimum tillage approach, less inversion of the soil in an attempt to try and reduce the amount of carbon they were releasing, and also helping with the soil health journey. Their rotations were starting to change as well, and this was probably impacted a lot from that policy and impact of not being able to grow certain crops as well in the environment, and therefore adopting different crops within their rotation, so that you kind of saw it completely turned on its head in some instances. And then product use, not only from that policy point of view, but also from the economic point of view, and trying to reduce the level of inputs, but maintaining their output.
And I assume this also challenges the management of several diseases, such as Pythium and Fusarium. You were talking about crop trash, crop protection, hygiene, and so on are keywords. So we nevertheless have also a bit an adverse dynamic on the license to operate with several conventional products at the moment. This is of course much more pronounced in the European environment. So it's not getting any easier in the future, right?
No, certainly not getting any easier. And yet the license to operate piece is, I'm sure everyone is aware, increasingly more difficult within Europe. And we're losing active ingredients sort of hand over fist. So we're really lessening our armory and our ability to control these diseases in the way that we have previously. The interaction with some of these changes in farming practices that we're seeing, so the cultivation, for example, potentially seeing an increase in the amount of trash that's left on the soil between crops, and this is going to be directly impacting the carryover of disease. So, for example, an increased level of trash left on the soil, then you have the disease carried over on that trash, and potentially a higher risk of a Fusarium infection in the following crop. And also, no-till and extreme weather has been shown to impact yields and also the incidence of Pythium. So we're certainly seeing that these trends can have an impact on the diseases themselves.
Okay, so I guess, and at least that's my interpretation of your speech here. You are playing it a bit back to the industry you're working in, right? In order to address the challenge. So can you maybe explain to us what are the different players do in order to help the grower and obviously also the seed company in future not to be left alone in the combat against Fusarium and Pythium?
Yeah, so I'm coming from a bit more of a practical background in the UK. I'm trying to take that learning that I've got from working directly with growers in the past and try and bring a bit more of a practical approach to the way that we're thinking about controlling these diseases, and trying to bring that into my work with Syngenta. And to be fair, I'm seeing, since working at Syngenta, a huge amount of collaborations with universities, third parties, trying to carry out studies and understanding exactly how these diseases interact with the environment, which we'll touch on a bit in a minute, and also how the environment also interacts with our products that we're using to control those diseases, and actually trying to understand how we can use our products better.
So that means in the end we will have, especially again in Europe, a solution approach with many building blocks. So not one solution that fits all or one product that fits all in order to achieve the best control, but rather having many building blocks and a staggered approach towards the best-in-class control with the lowest level of inputs, of course. This is also important that we have the number of inputs that we are applying to a crop, that we're constantly working on reducing them. I believe this is very important at this stage. So Can you explain that a bit in more details, please?
So yeah, as I mentioned previously, we're working a lot with external collaborators and also internally to try and bring a more rounded recommendation to how we control these diseases. And I'm seeing a trend, not just within Syngenta, but across the industry, I think, moving away from this kind of product in a bottle concept to a more rounded recommendation of how to control the diseases best and how to utilize all the different methods we have to control Fusarium and Pythium in this situation.
Okay. It's also about expectation management, right? Because somebody has to adopt, and that's either the seed company or the grower, or in many cases both. So how do we manage those expectations going forward in such a building block approach? And I mean, it's obvious, as we said, the conventional offer that is currently in use is always stronger. It performs better, it performs longer term, and it is more persistent as well in comparison to what comes from the biological, especially from the biocontrol space, short and mid-term.
Yeah, so there's no hiding away from the fact that some of these new solutions, the more biological solutions, they have a lower level of efficacy than what we're used to. But some examples of studies that we're doing at Syngenta or doing with external collaborators is looking how we can understand the interaction between the environment that you use these in, soil parameters, and the impact on efficacy. So it's an initial study and it's ongoing, but some of the findings are quite interesting. So we've noticed actually that a decrease in the silt level has resulted in a decrease in efficacy. A decrease in moisture has resulted in an increase in efficacy of these biological products. And interestingly, going hand in hand with that one, an increase in sand also resulting in an increase in efficacy. Organic matter, that actually, so far at least, has shown to have no impact. And I think that's a really nice positive message that's coming out of this, especially if we reflect on what we spoke about initially in terms of the future trends and soil health being part of that. And when you're going on that soil health journey, trying to increase organic matter is one of the things that you're trying to do. So it's nice to see that hopefully we're not seeing a negative impact from that. We also have studies going on looking at how the environment impacts the incidence of disease. And so there's a study that we've done with the University of Kiel, which is looking at the incidence of Pythium across Europe. And we were able to link previous crop and soil texture as having a significant impact on the incidence of Pythium. Tillage had an impact, but it wasn't significant. So there's definitely lots of things that we can learn here going forward about future practices and their impact.
So isn't it true then, to a certain extent, that agronomy or basic agronomic practices, basic agronomic knowledge, the way how our grandfathers farmed, will play an even more important role going forward in tackling that challenge that lays ahead of us, in order to achieve best-in-class control of products or of a solution that we would like to bring into the market in order to combat those two diseases, Pythium and Fusarium?
Yeah, I think it can't be understated not forgetting the basics. And I saw it with all of my old customers, cultural control methods. Farmers are adopting cultural control methods anyway as a matter of course, and they're incredibly good at doing that. But I think it's really important as an industry now more than ever not to forget the basics. So drilling date, cultivation, managing the trash, choosing the correct variety, drilling depth and consistency of that drilling depth. So really remembering those basic cultural control and agronomics when we're establishing a crop to ensure that we have the best platform possible to grow that crop and ultimately grow we always have seen a crop protection input, shall we say, as a final resort. And I think that it's important to remember that going forward.
So that's lots of parameters, lots of things to be mindful about, right, in future. What does the industry do, or what kind of methods the industry uses in order to peel out the best performance of the products, and how can this become relevant to both seed companies and growers in future?
So one potential technology that we have in the market going forward is that I think could be used in this space is soil scanning. So we've mentioned in this talk now about the interaction between the efficacy and different soil parameters, the instance of disease and different soil parameters. So using something like soil scanning as a technology to understand the variation within our fields, we can potentially, with modeling as well, understand where we can use these different products to get the most out of them. So for example, if you have a field where you've got a particularly silty area on one side and a very high sand content area on another side, you might recommend that we know that the biological product, it doesn't perform well in that silty environment. Let's not use it there. Let's maybe fall back on more of a conventional control. And then in that more sandy area where we've seen an increase in efficacy, that's where we could potentially recommend using a more biological control method. So really trying to pick the right product for the right situation and doing that at a field level, not just at a farm level. I think also it's a good time to reference a lot of the work that's going on within the Seed Care Institute in understanding the application and mixtures and actually how we use the products. And so also using that knowledge that's coming out of the Seed Care Institute in combination with everything we've spoken about today is going to be really important going forward to try and give this kind of overall recommendation instead of just a product recommendation.
Okay, good. Many thanks for that. Yeah, I think the timing is advanced. We are touching towards the end of our session here, and as promised in the beginning, we would like to wrap it up and also to conclude. And I would propose that we align on 3 messages, right, from your end and from my end. So I start. I think overall it became very visible that the seed treatments have to adopt to new ways of cropping, and vice versa. So also the cropping has to adopt the new ways how seed treatments are handled, meaning this solution approach. So this is very important that we convey this message in the best way possible towards the grower, that it's also understood, and the reason why that we have to do that is understood. We will have to rely on prediction models, and we have to trust them. So data quality, how do we update data, and also how do we store big data is key here, in order to make a recommendation to the seeds company or to the grower to use the right solution for his farming conditions or for the variety the seeds company wants to treat. And then also, this is for me absolutely a key learning for what concerns Europe. Biologicals are no longer a complement to chemicals or to conventional products. I would rather say it's the other way around. So biocontrols, biological stimulants are the base, and we complement them with what's left from the conventional space. I don't know, Dom, is that about a fair summary, or do you have something to add?
That's a good summary. I think I would just add maybe four key points from me. So first of all, understand your enemy. So in this case, Fusarium and Pythium. Understand how they work, what causes them, what environments they thrive in. Understand your armory. So understand the limitations of the products we're using to control these diseases and how they interact with the environment. Understand the environment. So the soil scanning part is a good way to start to understand the environment that we're growing and using the products in. And then fourth, but certainly not least, keep it simple and remember the basics. All of the cultural controls they're just some of them that I mentioned, but cultural control methods are a key building block to being able to achieve good control of these diseases going forward.
All right. With that, I would like to do 2 things. So first of all, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Dom, for your explanations here.
Thank you for your questions. They weren't too difficult.
And I would also like to invite you to our Syngenta booth. You can see the signs just right behind me. Dom and I, we are there, and we are looking very much forward to interact with you and have a chat. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.